AFIO Now is presented by Northwest Financial Advisors, where our world revolves around you.
This is Jim Hughes with AFIO Now. We are a program of recorded interviews with former U.S. intelligence officers, and today I have a delightful guest. Her name is Lorraine Cosgrove. Lorraine was one of the very early female employees of CIA, and she's captured the highlights of her career and her life in a book entitled Still Living It Up. I've read the book. It's a real joy. And Lorraine has kindly agreed to come on the program today and tell us a little bit about it. Lorraine, welcome to AFIO Now.
Thank you, Jim.
Lorraine, tell our audience a little bit about growing up in Massachusetts and how were you hired by the CIA?
Yes, it was delightful growing up in Massachusetts. I had at the start of our family, there were three of us, two boys and myself, and Mom and Dad. And Dad built our home in Needham in 1938. It was a lovely place. And at that time, people did not have a lot of money. I don't know what, maybe a depression or something, but he hired an out-of-work architect, and he designed our home. And Dad was working in advertising with plumbing and heating supplies. So he was busy too, and he was able to give us many of those features, which stayed in the house. Anyway, we had delightful childhoods because we actually yearned for snow because we could ski and slide down our hill and do all those wonderful things children do. And my life, I skate a lot and ski, and generally we enjoy the out of doors a lot. And on Saturdays and Sundays, we're big. Our dad traveled a lot during the week, New York, Chicago, whatever. And he would make pancakes on Saturday morning. And he would invite the young people of the neighborhood to come in and enjoy them with us. And we did. And then Saturday afternoon, before he went for his golfing, he would scoot up and get beans and brown bread, which is stable in Boston in those days for Saturday night. And then he said he had to argue to get those pies at the bakery because all the women were there. So he had to push it where he had to get that. And then he'd go, this is Saturday morning or whatever, and he'd go to the candy store and buy molasses puff. That was a big feature there. Needham was a lovely little town we had. And then we'd have, that would be our wonderful week. And then we just enjoyed life a lot. And I can't say enough about the nice people in Needham and my school. Everything was lovely. And then one day my mother, I graduated from high school, and I was not sure exactly what I wanted to do. So actually, it's kind of funny. A priest wanted me to become a nun, but I said, oh, no, I can't like the boys too much for that. So that was out the window. So then I worked in some stores in Needham, just about a year or so, and as a soda fountain and bakery and a little restaurant. And Dad brought us up he liked to see a work ethic. So we all did. It was just the way it was. And so but Mother decided I should get some education. So she called Chandler School for Women in Boston. It was a lovely place. It was on Beacon Street. And it used to be a club, I guess. And they had huge that we would sit under to have special little get-togethers at the school. The president wanted to teach us how to pour tea out of big urns. I guess he thought he could make good, smart women, but they should know how to do these social activities. So it was kind of funny. But anyway, we did that. And I enjoyed Chandler so much. And then my senior year, it was only a 2-year school. And my senior year, a recruiter came from intelligence, Central Intelligence. So I thought, well, I don't know anything about that, but I'm going to go for that. And I think I was one of maybe 2 or 3 that went for the interview. I don't think there were many, because nobody really knew what intelligence. What is this? It had only been, I think, come up by, I think, a few years it was in action from 1946 and then 7 and 8. And this was 1948. So it was early. And the recruiter was a charming man, really nice man, whom I met later in my work in headquarters. And he described this work as ability to travel, meet people. I said, this is for me. And so I signed up. I filled out the forms and all of that. And then, as is the custom, in 1949, this was 48 when I had the interview, I believe. And then 49, I got the letters and all of that. And then accepting me and so forth. But I hadn't been accepted yet because the FBI was doing the investigation then. And a nice FBI agent came to our home, talked to Mom and Dad, to me, and he said to my folks, if she were my daughter, I wouldn't let her be going to Washington alone. And my father just looked at him. He said, she will be fine. I always remember those words, and they were very true. So from then on, then things developed. And then I got the letter. I would be housed. I would go to the headquarters and so forth in Washington. And then they told me I'd be in Main Hall, I believe at Arlington Farms, Fort Myer in Washington. And I think, as I said, I was assigned to Main Hall. I don't remember ever living there. I think it was Alabama Hall. All the halls that we used were named after states. So at any rate, I took my prop jet down on, I think it was 10 July 1949, and went to the hall, went to where I was supposed to go, I guess at Arlington Hall. And the next morning, I reported to the directions I were given, and I had a physical. They sent us physical. And this was an unusual physical because it was at, I think, the old naval building or something, because there were a lot of naval corpsmen who did our physical. They were all in a row. And you'd start, like other employees, we'd start at the first and continue on down the row of corpsmen. And the eyes are fine, teeth are fine, slung jaw, whatever. Oh, people said, well, I'll tell you, at the end of this line, you didn't have a lot of ego left, you said. And then a doctor would be there, and he would say, okay, I think you're all right. Maybe this, maybe that, but you're fine. And he'd pass you. And that was a physical. And then, of course, I lived at the Arlington Farms, and we were given these darling rooms. They were very tiny rooms, but they'd have a chaise lounge and done in chintz, lovely feminine chintz, and then the curtains to match, and the cot. And I think it was a navy blanket, a bureau, a closet, and the mirror over the bureau. That was about it. Down the hall were the ladies' rooms and all of the things we'd used. And telephones were out in the hall. we were a bunch of young women who came from all over the country. And I have fond memories of many of them. And if you locked your door at night, they'd say, "What are you doing that for, Lorraine? You get to leave it open because we're all together here. We don't want that to happen." So this is how close we were. Saturday nights, they'd have buses come to pick us up if we wanted to go dancing at the bases all around Washington. Of course, I was on them most every Saturday night because I love to dance. And you can visualize arriving at one of these bases with all these servicemen waiting for these buses to arrive, their dance partners. So it was a delightful place to live, to meet people. And I had one funny experience there. One of the dances was held right there at Fort Myer. And I was there, of course, dancing. And a gentleman in a business suit asked me to dance, which was rare because they were in uniforms, most of them. And he said, "Let's go for a soda." I said, "Well, we're not supposed to leave, We can't leave here. We can't get in cars. We're not supposed to." Well, he said, "It's all right. It's all right. We'll just go get a soda." So I took a chance and did. Right up the street, we had a hot shop or something. And while there, he said to me, "By the way, where do you work and what do you do?" I said, "Well, I work for the government, I guess. That's it." That's what I said, I believe. And he says, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "I empty wastebaskets." Well, he said, "I think I'm going to take you right back to the dance. It's okay. I'm an investigator." I said, "Oh." I said, well, that was an interesting thing. So we had been told that, I guess, empty wastebaskets. And I was naive. I said it. That's what we do. And so that we lived there, or I lived there at least, and a lot of women, we had this soldiers, sailors, Marines, all of them would gather in a lobby. And that's as far as they could get, by the way, in those bases, because, those barracks. If you dared to go, take a gentleman to your room, you were out. And we had a house mother, and she kept strict control of us. And she had a pass key, and in the morning, if you didn't go to work, you have the nurse check you out. And we were not 21 yet, which was the legal age at that time. So the government or the CIA at this particular thing was the one in charge of us. So she was strict. She took her rules seriously, and we obeyed them. And the young men who would come to these different barracks to visit and have cokes and soft drinks and whatever. And it was just a wonderful time to be there. But then in 1950, when the Korean War started, and they needed these barracks for the soldiers for the war effort. And so I often think, did they put them in these little rooms with these chintzy fabrics all over? I kind of wonder about that. But we hated to leave. And that may be why I wasn't sure the barracks I lived in, because we might have hopped around if they were closing, trying to stay as long as we could or something. I don't know. But we had to leave. And I think the agency must have led us in some direction to find housing, because I first went to a place where a lovely rooming house, and about 3 or 4, maybe 4 of us had one big room on the first floor. And it used to be an estate, I guess, because I remember the doors just sliding together like we were in the main ballroom. And believe it or not, there were young men upstairs. And they were the nicest fellows, and everybody got along extremely well. So that was, well, then we went from one place to another as each place, and until I finally left Washington for Boston. But before that, I was when we worked in Washington. Should I tell that? Would you like to know my job in Boston? I mean, in headquarters.
Tell us where you worked and what kind of work you did and what were the working conditions?
At Arlington Farms. I don't mean Arlington Farms. I mean the reflection pool. Along the reflection pool is where we worked. I think they were old army buildings or something, barracks they had put up, and they were very, nondescript, but they were, for us, they were wonderful. And I was appointed shortly after I got there in these buildings. I was put into a room with two senior members, two senior officers of the agency. And I was the only woman in that room, the two of them and me. And my job was to be pseudo crypto officer. Now, I was 20 years old and I was trained. Well, they taught me what to do, and I kept records on 3x5 cards. And pseudonyms were given to people who usually were going out of the country. Cryptonyms were used for projects and cases. And then, of course, aliases also with pseudonyms. So I took my position very seriously, and because lives did depend on them and on that security of that place. And I had a sad incident. I was told in my position they let me talk to agents who were going to be dropped here or there in the war zone, and I would tell them how to use these names, their code words, everything. And later on, I heard they had a reception party. So that made it very hard. But in those days, you didn't know who was around. It was the way it was. But the thing is, I would sometimes leave and walk back just to make sure that safe was shut. I mean, we were so well trained in security. And for our ages, all the girls were like this, whatever job they had. And believe me, they had high-ranking jobs as secretaries and all of that with the men who were then running the agency. And we were running it. It was being run from these dilapidated buildings along the reflection pool. But the one thing good is we'd go out for lunch and there's cherry blossoms. Beautiful there. So anyway, that was I still remember very clearly working there in those buildings. And they would tell you, if you were going to have lunch at your desk, it'd be best if you hitched it from the ceiling somehow because of the rats that were prevalent there. So, but we'd go to the cafeteria and hominy grits and all this wonderful stuff. Apple fritters and wonderful lunches. Of course, I suppose we were naive not to think that probably after we left, the vermin had a wonderful time. But food was good. Life was nice. And while I was working there, I actually had a relative of mine come down and he was interviewed. And one day he was interviewed, pretty much accepted. And from then on, after investigation, he served the agency around the world. So I feel responsible and happy and proud of that. He since has passed away. But anyway, my life up to this point with the CIA was absolutely fantastic. And of course, my father and, they were happy about all this. They were very patriotic anyway. I had brothers eventually served. Everybody was patriotic. And sometime the wartime started and all of that. But do you get, I hope you all got a glimpse of what it was like in 1949 to be young, that young, and hold that much responsibility in your hands. And we took it seriously. And I don't think anyone goofed. I really never heard of it. People were working for the men today that big, they were then, and they were able to keep up. These girls are just fabulous. And then it was there, I believe, that I met one day on a special interview with Alan Dulles. And I sat with him, and he must have done that. I think he did it, called young people in a one-on-one in 51 before he became director, I believe. And he told about his escapades in Switzerland and all. Fabulous time. I never forgot it. So anyway, leaving there was going to be hard, that's for sure. But I was also asked, while I was there, would I like to go to Paris and work and shape with Eisenhower, because I had a French name, Papineau. And I said, oh, I'm for that. Oh, my goodness, yes, I'd love to do that. The only trouble was I only had high school French, and that wasn't going to muster. That was not what they needed. So that's when I wasn't able to have that assignment. But I did. From there, I went to Boston. And you might, do you feel you have a glimpse of my early day there along the reflection pool?
Tell our audience what training you had at the farm, and then what was your first assignment in Boston like?
All right. I was a chief clerk, and they offered, that's what I was going to be, chief clerk. It was brand new, just open. And I had, I think, 4 or 5 girls that also were under, and I would assign dictation, investigative unit, whatever we had. It was brand new, and a lot of OSS, not a lot, but several OSS agents, former agents, came to work with us. And they were upstanding, just wonderful, wonderful people and men. And the office was delightful. And I had a lot of responsibilities there. I was, I think, about 23. And I did a lot of chores. I took care of the mail going and coming. And it was the funny incidents that people probably don't understand nowadays. But the men were extremely protective of women. And some people today would say, well, it was discriminate. No, it was not. It was, they wanted to protect us. And when they had a case that was very derogatory, it may not have been derogatory today, I don't know. But if it was not something they thought we all should know, or certain people should take dictation, they would ask for a married secretary. So, and then and sometimes my job would be to stamp obscene on the case if it was something like that. So we weren't supposed to see what it is. But of course, you peek once in a while, because if you don't do that, you don't belong there. So anyway, but I want to say how wonderful all of the agents were. And we had a wonderful time. We had a special agent and an assistant special agent in charge. And we were in one common room with the assistant and special agent in charge. And if anything funny was coming, we'd all laugh. We had just good times. We did a good job, though. I want to make sure people know that. It was well run. We handled serious problems there, and I enjoyed it too. So I think, and from there, from the Boston office, I volunteered to go overseas, and Germany came up. So I said, that's Europe. I want to go there. It's great. So they gave me a party, and by the way, I was in Boston, the Boston BFO about 5 years, I think. And it was 1956 that I left for Germany. And I can still remember, well, I had a lot of training before I went to Germany, I have to tell you. I was so that I would know some of the facts that I would be working under and so forth. And I went, I can still remember leaving. My folks and I, we went down to New York. The flight was going to leave from there. And we even stayed at a hotel I put in the book. I know the name of it and all that. It's so funny. It meant so much to me. And I traveled. The flight was leaving, I think, on Sunday. I'm not quite. Yeah, it was, I think. And we left it around 4 or something. And it was a one number. I think it was 100 President. The name was Presidential Flight 100. Red carpet right to the plane. And I had a berth in the plane. And that was unusual. Well, not, it is today, I guess. You do it, but then. And I had a seatmate. He was German. And he said, "You're going to Germany? You've got to learn Ich liebe dich," which is I love you. I thought, oh, all right. All right. So anyway, when it came, but before I went and used the berth, there was a bubble on the bottom of this plane. It was a cocktail lounge, made into a cocktail lounge. I don't know what it was before, but that's what it was now. And I went there because I thought, I got to see what this is. So I went down. You could look down to see the Atlantic. It was right there. And they were serving drinks. And it's very small, of course, the bubble. And I didn't stay there long because it was eerie. It was right for me. And I had finally it was time for me to go up to my berth and have it. And I can still remember waking up about 3 a.m. and we were approaching London. And I thought, oh my goodness, I said, London, imagine. And, it was all extremely exciting. And then we stopped briefly at London and eventually went on to Frankfurt. And I was put in, when I got there, I was met, of course, and I stayed in a military hotel, with a woman who was expecting a baby. And in those days, you had to come into a military establishment, U.S. area, in order to have your baby for them to be a citizen of U.S. So that's what she was doing. And then eventually I went to my apartment in Germany. And it was beautiful, just a beautiful place there, because it had been bombed out totally before and it had been reconstructed. So all marble steps and up, and just a lovely place. And I was put in with one girl, and she was very nice, but she had a few ideas about things. She didn't like the workmen and different things. Anyway, I moved out of there and down to my friend whom I remained friendly with until she passed away. She was a very bright woman and did many fabulous things for the agency. At any rate, I was there, and I was trying to think I was just trying to recollect what we did there at my gym. You can pick me up there
Lorraine, did you travel much while you were assigned in Frankfurt? Did you have a chance to travel around Europe a lot?
Why I was what? So I'm sorry.
While you were stationed in Frankfurt, were you able to travel around Europe a lot?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I did. Of course, yes. I traveled to most of the cities that I could get to. And I think that perhaps my job there principally was because I took shorthand. I was pretty good at shorthand. I mean, I have to say that I was pretty good at shorthand. And so I don't know any of the others who did take it there at the moment. I don't know. And we were all a small group still. It was nothing. Things had expanded, but not that great. And so when I did get sent to I had a TDY Berlin. And so that was a very interesting time to go to Berlin because I didn't know it. And you couldn't take the night train because only the military could. And then the blinds had to be pulled and all kinds of things. So we flew. And I remember when I got there, I was met and taken to our base. And I said to the guard, I really don't know where I'm supposed to go. Who do I report to? And he said, if you don't know, I do. And sent me to the right place. And I had to go to an attic and take dictation from a lot of men who were armed and all handsome, wonderful men, but they had no chatter with me. Everything was business. And I think maybe I was sent because I was from Frankfurt. Nobody would know me. I wouldn't know them afterwards. I had a feeling, your mind wanders, but they didn't have any chatter with me. And then I went back shortly to Frankfurt from Berlin, but I liked Berlin.
Lorraine, tell us how you met your husband, Tom.
I met Tom in Frankfurt in the Catholic chapel, a military chapel we had. And Tom he went to Boston College. So from Connecticut, he came from Old Line, Connecticut. And he found out, she's from Boston. So he liked to meet me. And then we went out to dinners a lot there were a group there, National Catholic Welfare in Frankfurt. And they were helping children, orphans and so forth, I believe. So he was friendly with them. And we just had a good time. Tom left about a year into, I was there a little over 2 years. He left about, I think about a year he and I went to Salzburg to a very big festive occasion when he had a friend who was the lead in the opera there. And that gentleman had been a lieutenant in the army formerly U.S. Army. And of course, Tom knew him somehow. And so we were invited to this operatic gala. And we actually had Hitler's box. And that's the picture that's on the cover of the book. And so then we went to the lovely dinner with the staff afterwards and of the opera. It was exciting. And that picture is Tom and me dancing to the Vietnamese waltz. So I was always very happy about that. So my time in Germany was lovely. I traveled and there were occasions like when I had met other people and I met someone ended up in Dusseldorf and I went there on a weekend. Sometimes I went there and I visited. This gentleman was a lovely fellow. I wasn't engaged yet to Tom, nothing like that. We were very good friends. But I had met this man and he spoke 7 languages and very charming. I believe he worked for the Catholic Society. I'm not sure, but he was transferred up there. And believe it or not, as I've said in the book, I had my own hotel room, a little pension in Dusseldorf. We didn't do we were the way we're supposed to be. We did not. So the CIA had pretty much taught us, be careful. Don't get too involved. Be careful of this fellow turned out to be fine, and he had worked for them and all of that. I don't know who he worked for, excuse me, but he was fine. And I was up there. We went to a night of dancing. And after that, I'm on my way back to my little pension. And it's late, about 12 o'clock, 1. And I look in the rear view and there's a Mercedes, I think, following me. And of course, I had USARA plates, U.S. Army Europe. And no matter where I went, I circled. This car followed me. And I thought, what am I going to do here? So I didn't have a phone. We didn't have cell phones. And I didn't know where the police were. I didn't know where anything was. So all I knew was how to get to the hotel pension. So I said, well, I got to make a run for it. So I parked down the street, turned around, ran up, and lo and behold, this gentleman had live parked in front of the hotel. And so I had to go past him. As I did, he said something in German. I ran in, told the desk clerk, don't let anyone up, don't let anyone, and bolted my door. I never realized never found out, but that's all right. Didn't need to. It was, I've had those, I had several things in while I was there. You know, you had to be just careful. That's all I can say. And there is a funny story that I think we were told, young girls were told, if an attractive foreign gentleman tries to tell you of your charms and your beauty, chances are you're not beautiful. They want you as an asset. So anyway, do you have any other questions you might ask me about that? I don't know.
Tell our audience Noster is.
Yeah.
Tell us what a Pater Noster is.
Well, a Pater Noster, I don't know how you pronounce it. That's what was in the building I worked in Frankfurt. And as it was very strange to us as it went around. It was sort of a round, square type thing. You would get on and it would go up and then jump over and go down. So it would never, you had the vision that this elevator was going to crash the ceiling. And we would tell new employees, be very careful because get off because you're liable to be crushed if it goes up and goes over and down. And it was a fascinating type of elevator. I think anyone's been there would understand what it was. And anyway, there were things like that. And then one time the police arrived, the German police, and oh my goodness, the guards were trying to push them away. No doing that. Everything was fine. Anyway, so do you have any more questions about?
Tell us how your brother was almost killed near the office building.
With that gang. What is that gang? The Meister. I can't think.
Bader Meinhof.
That's the one. Yes. He had been, my brother Jack had done a lot. He'd been military and then with the military Red Cross, he'd been all over the world. And at some point he was there at that building doing something. And as he came out and passed by the bucket outside, he just missed the bomb. So that's how dangerous life was at times in Europe. We never really realized it, but I've learned later that the whole area there was a mixture of spies, ours and theirs. It was, and we were taught how to get out in case we had to, in case I think it was the Russians come down. I think that's what they were fearful of. I'm not quite sure. And so we had directions. I had a car and those that I was to carry in the car. And so 12 or 1 o'clock, I might get a call anytime. And so they test you to see if you knew who was going to be in that car. Of course, this brother said to me, it'd have been awfully hard getting out of Frankfurt. They'd all be coming in, the truth. So, but anyway, we had a plan. And it was a delightful place to work at that time. I mean, I found it very enjoyable. And the cities I went to the Belgian World's Fair and saw Sputnik. And I went, there were just so many things that I tried to put them out in the book, things I did. But, I'm trying to remember them now. There's so many. They're wonderful times. I do have an experience to tell everyone listening about when I was, as I said, we lived in this lovely building. Our apartments were beautiful and they had been bombed out. And so one occasion, there are two that I remember very specifically. One was I woke up one night and I felt something grab my wrist on the floor. I looked down. Now I don't believe in these things either, but it looked like A man was laying face down. And I ran to get my roommate. No doors were unlocked. So I'm not one that believes in that, but this place had lost a lot of people in it had. So I never forgot that either. But one of the kind of fun things, one night the owner of this building, a German, he told us that the pipes are broken. We'd have no water till the morning. Well, we said, we can't do that. And the workmen were there, and they were taking their time fixing it. So we started figuring out what we could do. So we went up to our respective apartments. And of course, we had shopped at the PX, and we had all the different vodkas and brands. I don't know what we had, but we brought down wine, anything we had in the case, we brought down, and food and hams and all that. And we came down with trays. And we said to these men, if you can get us water within a few hours, all this is yours. Well, let me tell you, we had water, I think, within an hour. And of course, the man is screaming at us, the owner of Voltic, whatever his name was, he was just yelling at us. These men can't work. You stop them work. And it didn't stop their work. But I know a bunch of men that must have gone home very happy. Workmen. So that was women's ingenuity. We got it.
Full career with CIA, but then after you retired from the agency, you had another career as an actress. It's about that.
Well, an actress, yes. I did think it'd be fun. I'd always thought, what is it like to be an actress? I used to watch shows and everything. So being in New York, I had been, we took a transfer to New York when I got back, I ended up in, we came back from, I'm trying to think, we came back from Germany. I went and worked for a while in Washington. And then I took leave and went home and got married. That I could have gone back on a TDY to Germany, but Tom had asked me to marry him, so we had a lovely wedding. So now I'm living up there for a while on a leave of absence. And then my leave that I had taken was expiring, so we went back to Washington. And I'm trying to think when I got transferred to New York, because we had, in the book, I try to lay it out, all these different times we were here in Washington and New York. But it was while we were transferred to New York that I decided I wanted to be an actress. So I went to a casting office one day, and he had me read something, and I thought, he said, "You've done this before." I said, "Oh, no." But of course, I figured it was some kind of training I had, and I did that. So I was they sent me to a couple of different things. I was a stand-up. I was going to take the place of an aging actress, and I dressed up in Vera Wang gown in the Brooklyn stage that they filmed a lot of shows from. And it did, I think, the actress who I was impersonating as a young woman came and took all the records. So I never could have that tape. And usually they give it to you, but that I didn't get. So anyway, I did several times. I was in shows. I was in extras. That's where I met George Clooney and John Travolta and all that. And it was an eye-opening into how a movie is made. And I finally realized I wasn't able, I couldn't do everything they wanted, because one of them was to fall backwards and let someone grab you. I said, "Oh, no." So there are things I wouldn't do and wouldn't say. So it was a fabulous experience. That's all I can say. Being that.
One day you met some of the survivors from the Titanic.
I did. That was a very, very interesting time. It was in New York, and I had read that they were going to have two ships. One would bring the survivors that were in one ship. Any survivors were coming over to see where they were. The other ship was to pull up a piece of the Titanic, which was somewhere in the Atlantic, and the other ship, as I said, would hold the survivors. Not many. So I had read all about this. So I saw the tent. They had dropped the piece of the Titanic, so that wasn't going to happen. That didn't come about, but they had a party anyway. So they had a tent set up, and I decided I'd like to see who was in there. So one day I went down and I said to the guard at the door, "Would you get me a piece of paper so that I could get some of these people and these famous people to sign something for me?" And so he did. He went off and he got someone to do that. He got a piece of paper, and I went in, and he opened the tent door, and they let me right in, thinking because I have to tell you, I was dressed like the crew. I had khaki pants and a white shirt. Not deliberately, that's what I had on. And as I get in the door, the tent, a man in a tuxedo, everyone else dressed beautifully, he came up and he said, "I don't believe you paid $500 to get in here." I said, "No, I don't think so." So he said, "Well, as long as you're here, there is Mr. Novato in the wheelchair, and Miss Marconi is down there." So I first went to Mr. Novato, and he was sitting in his wheelchair, and he had a woman holding it. And I started to talk to him, and the woman said to me, and I started to show him this piece of paper, I wanted his name on it. And she said, "No, you do not do that. He will not sign anything for you." So I said, "Who are you, his nurse?" She said, "I am his doctor." And so I said, "Okay." So Mr. Novatel says, "Oh, no. And I used my maiden name because I thought he's French. And Papineau, Lorraine Papineau would do that. So he took the paper and he wrote a little note to me in French and put his name on it. I was so happy. And then they pointed out Miss Marconi, the daughter of Marconi. I understand it was he didn't invent Morse, but he used it for his theory. I don't know how it works, but anyway, it's a Morse code. And she was lovely too, and she wrote me a note. And I said, my husband would love that. So she wrote a note to Tom. And I have those notes. And I still have them. I just said to you, Jim, maybe I should do something with them, and maybe the Titanic Museum would be interested, something like that. Because believe it or not, I still have them. And so that was one of the big. Oh, and the Morse code, I want to say, and probably everyone knows that was used to help to send out codes, messages, so that the survivors, the ones that got out, would be saved. So that's why Morse code and Marconi was a big feature of the Titanic. And so anyway, that was my adventure there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you have any advice for young women who are thinking about a career at CIA?
Oh, well, I certainly do. Of course, it's fabulous. It's a fabulous part of the government to serve. I was very lucky to have been one chosen to do that. And if you're patriotic and you don't mind some of your life being controlled, because you do have to be careful who you pal around with and what you do. But it's not because they want to do that, but to security and protect those that might be in danger. And I would say anyone who walked in, as I have, to the lobby and see the wall of heroes of our agency, it makes you very proud and sad. But to work for the CIA has been I would never, if I had my life to live over, I would choose the same career I did because I felt it was certainly worthwhile and I felt I was helping the nation and I had wonderful friends and dedicated friends, and some I've lost, of course. And CIA given me so much. So anyone out there, if you are young women and you're looking for, well, exciting, yes, but more than that, if you're trying to be, if you're a patriotic gal and you're looking for a field you would love to go to work in the morning, and you know a little bit more than everybody else is going to know sitting next to you on that bus or train. I encourage it. But remember, it is a way of life, and your spouses have to be aware of it, and acceptance too. And in that vein, I'd like to say that when I took my retirement in 93 and got my certificate of retirement, my husband, Tom, received a certificate of appreciation for his faithful and devoted support to his wife's work while she served the nation. It's a beautifully written. I may not have repeated it exactly, but he was delighted to get this, and I thank the agency for it. It was a lovely, lovely token of appreciation. And so, gals out there, it always helps to learn a language, especially one that maybe isn't that popular, and go for it. That's what I did.
Well, the name of the book is Still Living It Up, and clearly Lorraine still is.
I don't know. My co-worker put that title, my co-author, not worker, my co-author. She put that. She made that title. And I said, well, I'm trying, and I guess I still am a little bit. And thank you. And so I just want to, again, thank the Central Intelligence Agency for all I received. I tried, and I did think I did my best wherever I worked, and I worked in different posts. But in all of them, I received nothing but really respect and joy in meeting interesting people. And through them, the center, I have my different benefits for which, thank God, I have. But I want to thank the Central Intelligence Agency for giving me the opportunity to serve in such a wonderful part of the government. Thank you.
And I'm going to thank Lorraine for telling us a great story.
Oh, thank you, Jim. And may I thank my co-author here, Deborah, because she really worked very hard in trying to pull this book, and she did pull in the book together. And we're very, I think, proud of it. And it's been an experience. And I hope anyone out there it's just a glimpse of what was like early on and how women like me was in my age were given the utmost respect. So just a funny story before I go. It used to be, but you had to make the coffee. I said, the coffee? Yeah, we made the coffee. But we'd get out there and get talking while we make the coffee. And then we bring this coffee into a boss for this wonderful, it's such good coffee and lovely. So it wasn't out of disrespect. We were given the greatest respect by these men, all of them that we worked with. When I hear people say, well, things were different. Well, women were highly respected in those days. And I'm sure they are now, but I'm just giving a glimpse of my time. And Jim, thank you so very much for the opportunity to be on AFIO because I'm a member, have been for quite a while of AFIO. I am of OSS as well because I have greatest respect for those men and women that served with the OSS and Sarah, our retirement outfit. So I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and hopefully I have done, I try to remember because I've had to remember since 1940. Well, 49, when I went to Washington. So I hope I've done a fairly good job in doing that. And if not, maybe I'll be corrected. I think the book sets off dates and times better than I've been able to do. And I thank Deborah for helping me on that. And all of you, thank you so much.
AFIO is a small, nonprofit, apolitical, educational organization whose main mission is to help prepare the next generation of intelligence officers to confront the challenges our nation faces in the years ahead. To learn more or support our outreach programs, visit www.afio.org.